Hello to all of my TPS colleagues. My name is Anthony Salciccioli from Clarenceville High School, and I am sharing with you what I created from our project together, and I will try to be as succinct as I can. I know many of us are presenting, so I'm going to try to spare you from a lot of the minutia just so we get to the essence. And this particular lesson has to do with genocide and genocide education. It's a 4-day unit, and to go through quickly the preliminary connections, it does connect to the primary source material taught to us by the Holocaust Memorial Center in Farmington Hills. It aligns to the Husky, genocide in the 20th century. There are 4 C3 indicators, as you will see. In terms of disciplinary literacy essential skills, there are 4 of those. In terms of digital literacy, there is 1, creative communicator, and there are 2 other standards related to the CCSS. Okay, so my point is that teaching genocide education fits seamlessly into what we have to do as educators in a history class. Now, to get to the lesson itself, the compelling question, what causes genocides to occur, and how do we discern genocide from other atrocities such as mass murder and war? Do we need to make distinctions? Are there reasons to make distinctions? Why do we make distinctions? And what lessons can we derive from genocide education? Bearing in mind there are some naysayers that say this is too heavy duty for children to learn, or why are we focusing on this doom and gloom? Why are we talking about the negative aspects of history? This sort of thing, but there is tremendous value in learning about genocide education. Now, to buttress that compelling question, I have 3 supporting questions. What factors and circumstances caused the Holocaust and other genocides to happen? Supporting question number 2, what other genocides have occurred in recent world history, and how do they fit into the broader construct of genocide? And supporting question number 3, are genocides preventable? What needs to take place to prevent them? What can be done as an individual to prevent them? Okay, so I'm starting off day 1 with the 10 stages of genocide. So the 10 stages of genocide, you learn about some of the vernacular into genocide education, as you can see here. Genocide compared to mass murder, scapegoat, stereotype, racism, anti-Semitism. So this is really essential vocabulary for the students, okay? Now, you can see it's divided up. We're going to provide some examples and the 10 stages of genocide, and there's the assessment. Now, to show you something a little more specific, the 10 stages of genocide, there is a video that accompanies it if people are so agreeable, and as you can see, I will take children through the 10 steps of genocide and what each stage describes and some historical examples. Okay, so for the very first day, what I'm looking for are is the schematic. Okay, I'm looking for how genocide is formulaic and how it works, and that's the intent of day 1. So day 1, they're assembling their vernacular, these 11 words here. They're seeing how genocide is very systematic, very formulaic, and that's the goal of day 1. Now, the goal of day 2 is we're going to go specific into the Holocaust. Now, I'm personally of the mind that when you are dealing with the most difficult topics in history, primary sources really are the way to go. And it's fairly simple. I have assembled here a variety of visuals and showing different sides of it. And children will have these, whether you put these around the room, or whether students look at it as a PowerPoint, and you can see all of these different vantage points, different stages of genocide, and you let the students hypothesize what's going on. Let them guess. Okay, some of these are a little more innocuous than others. Some of these are a little more graphic than others, obviously. Okay, so through these images, students can guess what's going on. Now, for teachers who might not know what's going on, I did provide a cheat sheet, if you will, to what is actually going on for each one. Okay, and for teachers who are brand new to this, I remove my face, you can see what's going on. So for my second day, I'm really letting the imagery speak for itself, okay? So through this gallery walk, whether it be digital, whether it be around the room, Students will talk, hypothesize, write down what they feel is going on, and then when the teacher presents the actual outcome, I hope they have a curiosity to whether they were right or wrong. That's a very teenage way of looking at something. And then the teacher will weave a cogent narrative together from these different perspectives to get across to the Holocaust. Now, for day 3, we're going to look at other historical atrocities and whether they are genocides or not. Okay, so these particular readings, which would be a combination of primary sources with secondary sources. Obviously, this would be a primary source. So was the transatlantic slave trade a genocide? Or was it something else? Genocide of the Native Americans. So these readings are pretty succinct. Some are a little more well-known than others. And it's the hope that students can use their brain and take and apply that knowledge to what they learned yesterday and apply that to looking at other atrocities, genocide or not, and having that healthy debate. And people may see this differently. And you have to, as the teacher, really be sensitive to these difficult things students are going through, but at the same time, try to really illustrate the point. Some of these atrocities were preventable. Some of these atrocities didn't have to be that way. Perhaps if different people were in power, people thought differently, these things could have been prevented. But we're going to end with righteousness in the face of evil. And I have been to the Holocaust Memorial Center several times, and I love how they structure it. They go from you start with the history, and it's in light, and then you get darker and deeper into the place until the worst. It's very dark, and you see the horror, and then you emerge into the light. I have been to Yad Vashem in Israel, same sort of thing. After the darkness, we go to the light. So it's really important through genocide education that you illustrate the point that people are not all evil, that people can be righteous. And for the 4th day of the lesson, I have a graphic reading Righteous Amongst the Nations, okay? And you can see it again. It's a combination of primary and secondary sources. It's a combination of biographical pieces. And students will learn about just a handful of some of these righteous people. And it's inspiring to me that in the face of pure evil, people did do the right things. And I hope the point gets across to the children that, essentially you have a choice. Do you want to reside in darkness or do you want to reside in light? So we're going to be really focusing on this dynamic of perpetrator, victim, bystander, upstander, which applied to these historical examples, but it applies to a school hallway, for things that go on here. So that's the big focus for day 4, to not end in darkness, but to end in light, and to make the point that evil does exist. Evil has existed. It always will exist. We don't live in this Pollyanna sunshine world where everything's hunky-dory all the time. Okay, that's a little more idealistic for my taste. The reality history has shown us there's tremendous evil. However, there's also tremendous good, and hopefully that little kernel of wisdom can get in the children's head, and they opt to be somebody who resides in the light and not to the darkness, which brings me to the final assessment, this taking informed action. Now, this is my second assessment, and I appreciate you, Troy, for helping me steer this, where students are going to be in a hypothetical situation, okay? And in these hypothetical situations, they're going to have to figure out what stage is it describing, and then 3 tangible examples from history. So they're going to apply their learning of the other genocides to this. And, it's a combination of the stages, and it's a combination of the history. So from the hypothetical situation, what stage is it describing? What are some tangible examples? And then they're going to craft a letter to their own president, and they're sending it to the UN or some governing body where they're going to make their position clear. They're going to back it up with evidence. They're going to suggest, why they should act in a way that's in righteousness and not in evil. And again, trying to make a logical argument. explaining the issue, supporting your stance. It's a call to action. And the hope is as we end this with this assessment, and there's a rubric for people who want rubrics. Okay, that's nothing intriguing for the people who are watching this. But it's the hope that children, when they see evil, when they see people not being righteous, to call it out, to be on the side of light and righteousness. And that's ultimately the hope for this genocide education. So I'll repeat one last time to sum up what I created. I utilized primary sources to get across genocide. Maybe probably the most difficult topic, if not one of the most difficult topics to get across in history. I created it over 4 days. The first day is to understand the 10 stages of genocide, kind of a broader umbrella that the rest will rest underneath. The second day, I'm asking them to focus on the Holocaust. And from my point of view, as a world history teacher, we have the U.S. history class that comes before world history. That is taught about in U.S. history too. So for people who are saying it requires more time, for me it's a reiteration. Now, if you're a teacher who's teaching this for the first time, obviously the days are fairly arbitrary. You can take more time based upon that. Now, I crafted it so I can use it, which is a reiteration of what my U.S. history colleague got across to them earlier. Then we look at other atrocities throughout history, which connects to the husky of looking at recent genocides, and it applies the 10 stages of genocide. And then the fourth day is being righteous in the face of evil, which is more of a humanistic point for students, asking them to be righteous, to be on the side of an upstander, not a bystander. Just don't let evil persist and just watch it go by. Having some empathy for the victims, supporting victims, okay, and to call out the perpetrators. So this dynamic holds true in a lot of situations, and the assessment piece of it is probably threefold. I look at it threefold. To once again be able to identify the stages of genocide, which is important because if genocide is stopped early, you can nip it at the bud. It doesn't grow into full-blown genocide. It's a sequential 10-step process. Nip it early, hopefully it doesn't get to the evil outcome at the end. Looking at historical, tangible examples would be the second point of this. And then the third point of this is to take informed action, to make a compelling argument, to be active citizens, which is the point of social studies. So thank you to the Holocaust Memorial Center for your inspiration and your materials. Thanks to Troy for all the help you gave me in terms of your insights and logistics. And thank you to all of my colleagues for, allowing me to work with you. And one last thing, thank you, Troy, for making this an online option. As a track coach, I've been MIA the last couple of months here, but that allows me to do both things. So thanks to all of you, and I look forward to hearing your lessons as well. So stay well, everyone.